ProJaked. How you doing, fella? You good?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Hope you're doing well.
From you, man. Really good to do this video with you. I really appreciate you taking the time for doing this with me.
Not a problem. Not a problem at all.
All right, so the TEW2020 demo finally dropped yesterday. Give me your first impressions.
Straight off the bat, higher resolution, big tick. 1366 by 768 or whatever the size is. Beautiful size, perfect size. Should have been the size for a long time. I really like it. I like the added. I like how much. I like how much it is on the screen. Like, you know, if you're someone who's on one monitor, maybe you might have the problems of, it's hard to click back between TW and Discord or something like that. Fair enough. But I also had the problem where, TW 2016 was not big enough on like a 1080p monitor. And I felt like I had to either move myself forward or kind of, hope that, pretty much move myself forward and squint my eyes at stuff and hope that I could understand it. Because 2016 was like, it felt like it was like a 2006 resolution, and 2020 feels like it's finally starting to catch up. I'm not saying ever make 2020, ever make a TW game 1920 by 1080. Never make it full screen. It's not a game that needs to be full screen. But this size to me is a perfect size. It's a Windows size. It's like the size of a YouTube video when you don't full screen it, and that to me is just the bang on perfect right size. So yeah, straight off the bat.
Okay.
Love the resolution. Like the buttons on the side. I like the way they looked a little bit more. Yeah, they didn't look as blocky as they did in 2016. And then the database as well, being able to mass edit stuff looked impressive right off the start. So if you have edits in your database, if you have errors in your database, being able to mass edit all of the changes will be very effective, people, I think. I like the touch of being able to import a 2016 database over, but I'll get to that later on. And straight off of booting it up. That and the loading times. Loading times, big plus. Big plus.
Yes. First things that hit me just to go off that was the loading times, massive. Obviously, I got an up-to-date mod literally straight in there and converted it straight from 2016. And the way that it chewed through it at like really high speed, I was really, really impressed with. None of that, fake crash of the game that 2016 did on a lot of rigs. That seems to be gone. That's probably more of a rig thing than it is a game thing, but it's something that I noticed anyway. Because I've been waiting for this game for so long, 4-year waiting period. I was kind of overwhelmingly positive on it. Obviously, when I first booted it up, I was live streaming on Twitch anyway, so kind of have to be overwhelmingly positive to kind of try and keep everyone engaged. Some of the new features are fantastic. Like I said, we'll get into that later in the video. The thing that really stuck out to me was the UI, though. The colors on there, blinding. I don't know about you, it hurt my retinas.
Eyesore is what I'd honestly put it down to. I said about 2016 how I have to squint to look at stuff because it's, usually text I had to squint to look at because it was a bit too small for my liking. This hurts my eyes to look at for an extended period of time. It is not an appealing. The colors, they clash in all the wrong ways. They don't go hand in hand with one another. 2016's custom skin was nice. I didn't change my 2016 skin for months. Straight away with 2020, I want to change the skin. It is just not appealing at all. And the UI as a whole is, when you get into that office for the first time, it is too much, I think is the best way of saying it.
I did spend a considerable amount of time just figuring out that there's certain buttons on the home screen that do the same sort of thing. Like you have the buttons all down the bottom, which is fantastic, but you also have the ones on the side which take you to similar places.
Mm-hmm.
I always knew that new features would obviously mean new buttons, are more, maybe cluttered's the wrong word, but I'll just use it for the time. It's like a more cluttered interface with obviously the new features that are coming along. But I did note that it seems to be a little bit confusing for confusing's sake sometimes with some of those buttons.
Yeah. Furthermore, the text box in the middle of the screen where it says, this person has worker problems. This, you need X amount of workers. It's too big. It's too, it's widthways too big and its lengthways too big. It takes up too much of the screen. And as a result, all of those creature comfort buttons that I adored in 2016, roster, medical, broadcasting, finances, all of that is just cluttered into one box. And even after putting in the amount of time I put into the game, I still don't know where the things are. I still don't know where medical is. I still couldn't tell you where coverage is. Everything is just so much harder to find. And like you said, it just feels like complexity for complexity's sake.
I mean, for hardcore players like ourselves who are obviously content creators, I think it will be easier for us in time just because of the sheer amount of time that we will spend on it.
Yes.
I'm not, that's not a defense. I'm not saying it as a defense, but I think it's a little bit difficult for me to have kind of like perspective on that because of the fact that I will have a lot more playing time than the average person. But we will get down to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to move on quickly and ask you about, what your thoughts are on just the overall community reaction of it. I know that you've spent some time on the Grey Dog forums, obviously after the release, and I haven't spent a huge amount of time on there, but I will get into that. Whereas I, was watching streams after mine. What's your assessment on what things have been said?
So this is only going off of the Grey Dog forums. I didn't go on BeTheBooker.net. I didn't go in any other forums that were talking about the game. This is just off Grey Dog. This is off the TEW2020 beta general discussion thread, I think it was called. And people putting up their own little threads with bits and pieces. This isn't about mod chat or anything like that. It's literally just people's reactions. And it is a toxic war zone. You have people on either side. And by that I mean there are people saying there is nothing good about this game and only bad, and you have people saying there is nothing bad about this game and only good. They are the loudest voices. They're throwing back and forth back at each other. And if there are people in the middle saying, look, I really like this, this, and this, but I really dislike this, this, and this, they feel like they don't exist in those posts. Like, I think the general discussion the last time I looked at it was something ridiculous. I think it was in like the 70s of pages. And it felt like every page I was going through, if there was any people saying, oh, I like this, I don't like this, their voice was just lost. In amongst all the, oh, how dare you think this is bad about the game? How dare you think this is good about the game? It's like, can't we just have a discussion? Why do we have to shout at one another?
It's a very similar thing that I noticed on the streams last night. So when I got off my stream on Twitch, I just took a few, I took about 10, 15, 20 minutes just going through some other streams and just hearing some general feedback that I had. And the real problem that I have with it is it's not just that it's a reflection on the game itself. It's also a reflection on just the wrestling community. Now, one of the things that we know as wrestling fans, not just TW fans, but wrestling fans in general, is that the general public's perception of us is, it's not great.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to use words like, like neckbeard and basement dwelling and that kind of thing. I'm not specifically using those words, but it's names that we've all been associated with because of our love for wrestling. And the first thing I thought of when I was watching these guys was, you are reinforcing everything that the general public has a perception of us of. Just some of the things that were getting said, about Adam's work, the databases, the UI, just everything in general. It wasn't criticism. It was just pure toxic.
Yes.
And for me, it's completely unnecessary. It's not productive whatsoever. We've all been looking forward to this release. And I'm fully aware that because of the fact that we've had to wait 4 years for it, you are going to be on either side, of the seesaw because, you boot up the game. It's either a case of you're so hyped and you're so pumped that it's finally been released that anything that you don't like kind of gets pushed to the back of your brain because you're so excited and you're so hyped to play it. Or you're on the other side of the fence where you're so excited and you're so hyped to play it and you've waited for it so long that if the first couple of things that you see you don't like, immediately anything that's good, anything that's productive just gets completely shoved, to one side, and all of a sudden you have this toxic mess of, irrelevant opinion. Well, not irrelevant's probably the wrong word, but I'm going to say, irrelevant opinions, that don't have any meaning and they don't have any, progression to them whatsoever. And I was just saddened by it, mate, if I'm going to be honest. Just saddened by it.
Yeah, anyone posting something like Adam is a dumb cuck and he should kill himself. I'm not saying anyone did. That's just an extreme example that just came off the top of my head. What are you hoping to achieve with that? Like, really? What are you hoping to achieve by saying that? Like, are you suddenly going to think that he's going to fix all the problems that you haven't listed? Do you want him to go kill himself? Vent your frustrations, but by all means about the game. And I absolutely will as this video goes on. But don't do them in a toxic manner. Don't be a piece of shit. And it goes back to that thing you said about neckbeards and all that. It's like Twitch communities, like Ice Poseidon or something like that, who, people on the outside looking in just like, why do I want to be in that? You're scaring away people by acting the way that you do. Someone might, maybe someone watched a TEW2020 stream and was like, oh, do you know what? I'd really like to get into that. Maybe the forums can help me. They go on the forums and they see people flinging shit at one another. They might just be like, you know what? I'll just give it a miss.
Yeah. It harks back to the release of, for me, it harks back to the release of 2K20.
Yum.
And I think it's kind of unfair to compare the two because obviously when 2K20 was released, it was unplayably broken.
Yep.
It's nowhere near as bad as it is now. Like, completely accept that. But it's the same sort of reaction that will prevent new players from coming into the game, will prevent new people from coming into the community, because they'll either have a perception that the game is unplayably bad and that it's a complete waste of time, it's a complete waste of money, or they'll have the perception that anybody who plays it or anyone who invests their time in, either creating content or putting their opinion out there on the forums or whatever it might well be, it's just not worth listening to. And that's the thing that really gets to me. I don't mind saying it on video. It needs to stop. And I want everybody to have a voice. At the end of the day, everyone's entitled to their voice. But it's things like this, and it's reactions like this that sometimes make you think that they don't deserve one.
It's frustrating to see because obviously, not to sound like a priest or whatever or someone, I was living and breathing through the 2K20 reaction. And I'd probably say that was worse than TEW2020's reaction, but it was agreeing, it was agreeing, look, this is bad. But the difference is that you'd swear some people who were arguing about TEW2020, they act like the game, like 2K20, was in no state to be released. Like, no one was trying it out. Ryland or beta testers weren't giving it a try. Ryland just looked at the game and just went, yeah, that's right, yeah, that's good. 2K20 is a completely different shit show of a scenario where 2K being 2K basically kicked Ukes out of the door and threw in Visual Concepts with no idea what they were doing. And I sympathize with Visual Concepts for that, but obviously it's not about 2K20. But this has been a guy who has put a lot of time into this game. And yeah, there's good. Yeah, there's bad. But to act like, he's wasted 4 years of our lives by making us wait for this game, that he's pulled a fast one on us for a little bit of money, is completely the wrong mindset to have. If there's a forum post out there on the forums right now where people are having civil discussions about what they like and what they dislike, maybe it is buried page 57 into the general discussion forums, but no one's going to see that.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to see the forums where the people who agree with each other are agreeing with each other, and on the good and the bad side. And then they're going to see the people in like the mass general discussion forum who agree and disagree with each other and are just lobbing, insults at one another, basically saying, oh, you don't get it. You don't get the complexity of this game. And then saying, no, this game is shit and anyone who enjoys it is a dumb cuck. Like, there's a voice in the middle.
Yeah.
Like, try and reach something in the middle. And it does. It extends outside of the TW community. It extends inside the wrestling community as a whole. And again, you're just scaring people away. And it's just not nice to see. Like,
yeah. That's the point that I really want to stress. There's in no way am I comparing 2K20 to TEW2020. There's absolutely no correlation. What I'm comparing is the community reaction and the potential damage that it can do to future players, and it can do for just the growth of the community and the game. Because when you treat, you know, a free demo release, because let's face it, that's exactly what it is. It's a demo that Adam's provided to us for free, with the same contempt that you would provide a AAA, you know, title that got released under the WWE brand name, and that was completely broken and was arguably the most broken release of all time in video game history. When you have the same sort of reaction, you're going to have the same sort of outcome, where people won't touch it with a barge pole, people won't get invested, they won't watch content, and they won't buy the game and they won't play it. And I don't think that's fair.
Yeah,
and I think it needs to be called out, and I think it needs to be stopped.
There'll be people. I genuinely think there'll be people who will go into that. Who might have 2016 and may think about upgrading to 2020, but want to get people's opinions of it. See people throwing negative and positive opinions either. Realize there's no common consensus that people can arrive to, and just think, oh well, what's the point? I'll stay on 2016. And in the same breath, I think
100%.
I think to go back to the UI conversation, I think the problem with the UI as well will be that it's not new user friendly. Like, you kind of, with a game like TEW, you do kind of have to put time into it to get used to it. But if it's not user friendly right off the bat, if there's not something that a person who's never played a game like TEW, hasn't even touched something like EWR before, and picks up this game for the very first time and doesn't understand a single bit of it, again, you're not going to be bringing people in. You may have people who upgrade from 2016 to 2020, and they might not be a fan of it. But yes, community.
And that's a double-edged sword there as well, because like you say, if they jump, you got on one hand, if they jump on 2020 as a brand new player and they see the UI the way that it is at the moment, where it's confusing for confusing's sake, and just something as simple as the color screen makes you want to rip your own eyes out, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to jump on Google and you're going to look for help on how to play the game. And unfortunately, when you type in TEW2020 on Google, the first thing that comes up is the Grey Dog Software website and links to their forum. If they're going to go on there, they're going to get paid on the other side of the sword, which is the toxicity in the community, which equals no one buys the game, no one cares about it, no one gets invested in it. So you can't win when people are like this.
No, I agree.
Is there anything that you really like? Is there anything that when you booted it up, and obviously when you were on stream, that you immediately thought, this is money?
Hang on. It was on the tip of my tongue, and now I've just completely lost it.
The progression system, or
yes, that was it. Mid card, lower mid card, and all of that kind of going away. Love it. Love progression system, because the reality is that, in 2016 you may have a guy who you'd like to groom to be a main eventer, but he's in like the lower mid card. But you can't just put him in the main event, because you'll get massive penalties for putting someone who isn't in the main event. The crowd will be completely turned off, and they could have like a good match, and then it ends up being the case where it gets massively penalized, even though they have good performances, because the guy isn't main event caliber, and you have to spend 6 to 8 months just being able to move him from the lower mid card to the mid card. Being able to dynamically move people around, based off of how you feel about them, based off their performances, based off of audiences being hot or cold on them. That is fantastic. It flows. It's realistic. It's what wrestling kind of is, because, in wrestling, people go hot and cold on people very quickly. And to see that translated into the game is great. I love being able to decide, do you know what, this week, even though he's definitely a main eventer, I want to use, say, MJF to groom Jungle Boy. If you did that in 2016, you'd get penalized for two people being in different categories facing one another.
Yep. It kind of interlinks with what we're talking about before with the community. Like, one of the things that I really like is the way that the progression system works. I'm just reiterating basically what you say. It is extremely more realistic. A wrestler's push, especially these days, is become way more fluid in terms of them moving between what people define as the mid card and what people define as the main event scene. And having, an audience perception of a wrestler means that you can book them better, which means it will only increase your ratings as well. Because at the end of the day, if you think someone's in the main event and you're not looking at the dirt sheets, or you're not looking at the ratings that they get during the match, your audience is going to give you the opportunity to get better ratings with it anyway.
Mm.
But the streams that I watched last night, they were like, this isn't realistic. Where's my main eventer? Where's my upper mid card section? Where's my mid card section? I'm like that's not what wrestling is. I'm going to tell this worker that they're a mid carder. And again, I feel like I'm reiterating what you say. Like you say, it used to take months upon months upon months to get someone who shows potential from the lower mid card or opener all the way up to main event. During that time period, you're going to put him against people who don't want to put him over, ruin the dressing room atmosphere. And it just becomes more of a ball ache than it does, I'm enjoying playing a video game. Do you know what I mean? It feels more of a grind.
Yeah.
And I think this new system completely eradicates that. And I'm over the moon with it, personally.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of room for enjoyment with this new system. It's going to be fluid. And I think as well, it's going to catch you off your feet. Like, you know how it is in TEW2016. Once you got into a groove and you kind of got into like this bubble of how you could book, you never left the bubble. You would go on another You would go on another save and you'd book in the same bubble. This time around, you're on your feet because you might book in that bubble and it might work perfectly on one real world save. You go to another real world save in the same database, falls flat in its face, and the company is losing popularity every show.
Yep. 100%. One of the things that really stood out to me was the talk to worker section. For me, this is the biggest thing that I've found positive. It makes booking shows a lot easier. It makes long-term booking a lot easier. The fact that you can go to a worker and ask him if he'll put someone over. The fact you can ask him if he wants to take a bump on the next show, if he'll change his gimmick, if he's happy turning heel, if he's happy turning face. It just means that you can plan storylines better, rather than going into a show, trying to put someone over someone and all of a sudden he doesn't want to do it. Or, you're using a couple of high-flying lads and you can get an extra 5 or 10 rating on a match by having them take a bump and they don't want to do it. And it demoralizes you on the end of it going, oh, I had this planned. And it makes you want to click the X button on it half the time. But it does for me anyway. When you do long-term booking and you're restricted by stuff that, the new software, the new 2020 actually fixes. And it's something that I've been crying out for a hell of a long time. And I'm so glad that they brought it in. And it's really, really fluid and it's really, really in depth.
Yeah, I think it'll solve a lot of morale issues. Because if you remember as well, a massive problem always in 2016 was always you wanted to move someone up to the mid card or whatever. One week your system might say, oh no, they're a lower mid carder. The next week they lose morale because they're not a mid carder. And it's like, help me out here. And then as well as that, that's the removal of the thing as well. But the talking also helps with turning people heel and changing gimmicks. In 2016, you'd be like, oh, this person's got a 93 heel. Why are they not a heel? You turn them heel. You give them a heel gimmick. They can work A- or whatever. You do the turn. Falls flat in its face for whatever reason. The person says it was a terrible idea to turn them heel. And it doesn't explain why it was a bad idea. Now you can talk to them and be like, hey, I'm thinking of turning you heel. And they'll be like, yeah, do it. Thinking of changing your gimmick. Yeah, do it. It's so much, it stops those kind of falling flat on your face things that, like you said, that make you want to click out of it. Like you would have a heel turn fail. So then what you do usually is you'd back out, you'd close the game, you'd load up at the start of the card, and you keep on playing it until the heel turn was a success. But that's not fun. It's grinding.
100%.
It's you're clicking until you get the outcome you want, and that's it's counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's getting away from grinding and getting more towards playing. Which is something that I've wanted for this series for so long. Yeah. And I take my hat off to Adam for that because he's done really, really well with that.
Obviously, the deathmatch thing will, that'll be fixed. Where if you talk to someone and it breaks, the game breaks when you try and talk to them to do a deathmatch. But I'm sure that'll be fixed in due time. That's a very that's a minor problem compared to a lot of other things. I think there was
the whole reason I haven't brought up bugs is because it's a demo.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like you can't go, oh, it's buggy, it's broken, I can't play it. Well, it's a demo, so.
I think the counterpoint to that, though, is this is a demo, not a beta. People have been beta testing this game.
When you load up the game, it does actually say beta.
Oh.
So
Well, then make your mind up on what to call it, please.
it's a beta demo, bro. It's a beta demo.
There was one other thing that I liked as well. Oh, this is one of his main talked about features. Actually, I got two of them. One is more of a minor thing. Tour dates. It says what show you are into the tour now. So say okay. As sometimes happens on TEW, you turn the game off, you don't touch it for 2 weeks. You come back on, you have completely forgot what tour date you're on, you've completely forgot a lot of things that are going on, and then you're just kind of scrambling, and things don't look as well. You come back onto the game now, and it'll be like, this is your 6th of 7th tour show. And I think that'll give a lot of people the, for the real world side of things, that'll give a lot of people a drive to do like a New Japan save or something like that.
Yeah.
Which will be interesting. But my main point...
Funny things.
What did you say?
No, I said it's just little tiny things like that just gives you a lot more immersion.
Little quality of life. And then my big one, I know he talked about it in his journal, but it is really nice, is changing the card midway through a show. Because
100%.
I loaded up my first show, and I didn't know the start show with issues, when it's like amber and it says, there are some issues on this show. I didn't know that just meant outright start show. I thought that was going to tell me the problems. But because I had not booked an angle, I was able to back out after the first thing that I did and book that angle in at the end of the show. And that was very much I really like that, because what it's like. There are some times where you start a show and you're like, oh no, I forgot to book this thing. And it might be your go-home show for a pay-per-view, and it might be like,
yeah.
Well, now it's going to go in on lower heat.
I had that last week. I was booking up to WrestleMania 36, my main event. I completely forgot to book an angle, a go-home angle, which obviously cost you storyline heat, and it cost you a rating.
Yeah.
Just do it again. Just tiny little things like that just make the game just so much more enjoyable, so much more realistic as well, which is a big draw of TEW, because the whole point of TEW is to have the realism element to it, and the more things that have been included in that to make it more realistic for the player to feel like you're more in the driving seat with it. It's only positive in my regard and that sort of stuff. And hats off to Adam, because it's a really, really good addition. Really, really good addition. Is there anything that sticks in your mind that you really hate? Like you literally either want gone or completely reworked? Is there anything that's coming to mind?
Straight away, I'll go into promos. I used to really be a fan of being able to book someone by face and by heel into a promo, and also by type, so excluding the card position on the card. There was no reason to get rid of the manager, authority role, backstage worker, etc., because all that does is, in a way, is kind of punish me for not knowing my roster well enough. And early game, you're not going to know your roster that well. You might not know who your authority figure is early game. Being able to sort by that role and find your authority figure is, it's great. And then you might throw someone into the promo as well, and you're like, and he's going to have a talk with him because he's a heel. And you may think, oh wait, he's a heel in the actual show. But when I started up this database, he was face, and now the segment makes no sense, and you've just kind of shot yourself in the foot. So I don't get why they're gone. I'm not saying bring back lower mid-card, upper mid-card thing for that. But, having face, heel, manager, authority figure, color commentator, etc. was a very nice... It was peace of mind, I think is the best thing to describe it. And it was, you didn't feel like you had to know your roster inside out. 50 hours in, yeah, that might be irrelevant. First 5 hours, that was very important to me to understanding my roster. And then... Go on.
Yeah, go on.
And then my second point goes into I don't get why they got rid of what a segment is rated by. Because, more often than not, you do use freestyle editor for certain things. Like, you can kind of cheese the game by being like, oh, if I was to do this in the promo engine, he'd be rated on sex appeal. But I can do it this way, and he'll be rated on entertainment. So instead of a 42, I'll get an 85. But it also, getting rid of what a thing is rated by, it's not consumer friendly. It's not, to go back to it, it's not casual friendly. Like, hardcore players will use freestyle angle. Yeah, no doubt about it. New players won't. People who have just come over from EWR won't. People who are playing the game for the very first time won't. You know, I don't like that feature, and I don't like having to search for the thing as well, because you'll find sometimes, like, I was trying to find an angle where an authority booked a 1v1 match for next week. So I typed in authority, and only one thing came up with an authority. And it wasn't even rated on authority. It was something like authority chooses easy singles match. So, yeah, those are my two biggest gripes.
I'll touch on the angle thing. So the rating on angle is it's not going to affect the hardcore player base, because I don't really know a lot of people who just don't use freestyle, but you already touched on that anyway. I think the big issue with that is, again, we're going back to the casual player who might pick up TEW for the first time. You know, they'll use the imported list of angles. If it's not being rated on the right thing, it's going to tank. You're immediately going to want to press. It's going back to that pressing the X button again, where you think, oh, this isn't realistic. You know, I've given John Cena a promo time, and it's got like a 50 rating. Like, you know what I mean? They're going to think this is trash. I'm going to go back to 2K. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Whatever it might well be. So yeah, again, I would agree with you on that. I think the main things that I really dislike about it is it's more UI stuff. It's the fact that I find it very difficult just to look at the game in terms of the color schemes. I know it can be easily fixed with the skin, and it probably will get fixed with the skin, but at the same time, if it's that easy to fix it as a skin, I don't really think it should be a problem in the first place. And I find myself spending a lot of time just finding really basic things that were readily available to me in 2016. Those are the main things that I really, really don't like. I mean, the button layout, obviously everything that's, you know, on the side to the left of the game, and then everything that's along the bottom, it does the same stuff. And like, it goes back to the point I made right at the start of the video. It just seems cluttered and confusing for confusing's sake. It's almost like we have a bigger screen now that we're playing on. We've given what the player base wanted, a bigger, you know, a physically bigger game. What am I going to do with all this empty space? You know, and I'm not a big fan of that. If I'm going to be honest, I'm not a big fan of
that. My biggest gripe, I will touch upon that UI in just a second with that regard. But also, to go back to the promo, there seems to be an issue right now with the promos, and I know I'm talking about glitches and all that, but there seems to be an issue where when you'll have a promo, this happens all the time for me in Freestyle Editor, you'll have a promo, you'll have someone rated on something, and then you'll have someone off screen who doesn't need to be rated on anything because they're off screen, and you'll say it's to continue this story. You'll then start the show, and it'll say, and you'll get the promo will take a hit because it'll say, oh, the promo served no purpose. And it's like, no, it was to advance the story.
Yes.
So something's up with there. I assume that's a quick fix, but it's just getting it out there to be like, you know, that because I took quite a few dents with that, and it was kind of frustrating. UI thing. I don't want to say hate. I strongly dislike the new way of seeing match rating in the aspect of I couldn't find it first time, and it's so hard to see.
Yeah.
It's like,
let's face it, you hate it. Like that's the reality.
Pretty much. It's like I remember seeing something and I was like, is that a 5, 55, 15? I can't see. Again, it's colors clashing, but it's such a small window. Like, I loved the perfect square block where it said B plus 73. Now it's just a number. And, you know, that number's in red. I don't know what that means to me.
100. I mean, there's a couple of other things that, you know, the firing mechanic, like, I don't understand why that's changed. Like, I really struggled with that when that first came in. I couldn't even find it. Like, I'm in a group for TEW on Facebook. I even saw somebody's actually created a YouTube video as a tutorial on how to fire people on your roster. And I just think if it gets to a point where someone's actually making dedicated content, like, just specifically for that, like, what's going on, guys? Like, just let me be able to click on the contract and just let me be able to terminate it. Like, that doesn't need changing, and hopefully he changes that back. But
that office menu, it needs the sections back. It needs the bit where it says roster, finance, coverage, medical, all that stuff. It needs that back, because you are just looking at a big rectangle with no idea of what is where and how what fits into what. Like, I don't know where coverage is. I know where it is in TEW16. I don't know where it is in TEW2020. I don't know where finance is. I don't know where medical is. Everything is just all in one big rectangular blob on the side of the screen, and it all just merges into one another instead of being like 2 rows, subheading, row and a half, subheading, which was so much nicer to see, and you knew where everything was. The reality is that, you know, this UI is, it's not even like, oh, it's you know, it's too hard to change it, or changing it would, like, you'd have to mess around with the resolution. I literally saw a post yesterday at 9 p.m, as in the beta had been out for 5 hours at that point, of someone who had made a better home screen, just chucking it up on Photoshop to demonstrate how easy it could have been done. And it was bringing back that roster backstage, because taking that away, I don't know where things are, and it's not user friendly. It's like, unless you know where the things are, and unless you know what you're looking for, you're not going to find it. And it's, you know, it's jarring. It's all just like a mess.
It's weird because the buttons that are on, you know, the Office page in 2016, where it's laid out in 3 different grids. You've got obviously your roster stuff, then you've got your TV and your developmental block, and then you've got obviously the stuff with the dojos and creating your own company and resign down the bottom. Those buttons are still there in the Office, but they're all like smushed together over on the right, where it literally looks like a QWERTY keyboard over there, like just choosing an option. It's all still there, and it's all really still in the same format, but just the simple thing of not dividing them up and not having them like literally in your face, is in this is, we have a whole screen dedicated to this, guys. Like, you can get to anywhere from this one whole screen, not just this little section of another screen.
Yeah,
it's just amazing how a little change like that can completely throw you off and completely take you out of it.
There are absolutely some quality of life features that are much appreciated, but there are also some quality of life features that are absolutely big yikes, I think is the best way of saying it.
Yeah.
Like, they just take away from the game. They take you out of it. And again, if you can't find a lot of stuff, you just like, you know, you're just like, why do I want to keep on playing this? Like, what's the point when everything just feels like I'm like, you know, I have to, you know, there's going to be those people who, even if they're hardcore players, there's going to be those people who might come home from work and they can only play like 3 hours a week or something. And if they're on TEW2016, they're going to love those 3 hours. But then if they've only got 3 hours a week on 2020 and they see it in the format that it is right now, is there really any point in them trying to learn it all? Because
100%.
Yeah, you've got these nice new features, but if it's going to take you a week to learn it, what's the point?
Thing I mean, if I was to summarize everything in terms of my reaction, what I really worry about is the casual player. I really worry about, like you touched on, like, even 3 hours a week's a lot to a lot of people.
Yes.
You know, it doesn't seem a lot now, because obviously the climate that's going on in the world at the moment. But once reality, you know, well, hopefully once we get some sort of degree of normality going on in the world, you know, 3 hours a week to invest in this game is going to be quite a lot of time.
100%.
And if you've got, you know, if you have the UI issues, if you have the, you know, the quality of life issues with that, you're just not going to touch it. You just won't touch it. Is it worth, you know, booking, you know, an 87 rated show rather than chucking on Fire Pro or 2K or the upcoming AEW game? You know, we don't even know how good that's going to be. I mean, and that's a discussion for another time. But that's the thing that I really, really worry about, is just the casual player who's first, you know, who's always had a bit of, you know, a thing like, oh, I've always wanted to book a wrestling show. I've always thought I could do it better than Bischoff. I've always thought I could do it better than Vince. And this is really the only way you can really do it, really, in terms of the whole, like, management. You can get away with some things on 2K. Obviously, it'd be a lot easier with GM mode. But again, that's a topic for another video as well. And if you don't get the little things right with just being able to navigate the game properly and know where everything is, you're just going to get turned off. And that's what I really, really worry about.
Another thing with the booking as well, to lead in, because this is another point that I dislike right now, is that everyone, you can think, oh, I can book this. I could book WWE better than Vince right now. But those presets that are new right now, I can't stand them. Like, I was doing an AEW one, and it was Wrestling Nerd Nirvana. That meant every single show I did, even a 1 hour dark, had to have a match based on storytelling, steal the show, and Wild Brawl / car crash.
Yeah.
That's too much. It's like, at that point, I'm not booking how I want to book. I'm booking how the game is forcing me to book. Because if I don't,
100%.
I'll be penalized. And it's just like, where's the fun in that regard? Being taken out of something to book how the game wants you to book. And, in 2016 and all that, there used to be ways around, you could tweak this, you could tweak that, and it would be a lot more quality of life. Now that's all gone, and if you want to change to something that fits you more, it'll take like a year to change or whatever, and then your popularity will sink down. But you still have to do that year of booking in that style that you want to change out of, and it's just not, to go back to the thing of what this game should be above all else, it's not fun.
No.
I don't 100%. Think, like right now, I don't think any of the presets are any good. Like, there's just too much going on in them. Like, I don't know, even like the most simplest one, like classic Southern style wrestling. It's still, for just some reason, there's just too much going on. And I just don't know. Like, there's a lot of them. That's nice to see. But if I don't want to pick any of them, and I can't edit any of them either to my own likes and tastes, you're just taking me out of the game and making me want to go back to 2016.
The last thing anybody wants is to go back to 2016. Let's be honest.
Yeah, we've been waiting ages for 2020. We had all this hype, and it's like, I don't want to go back to a game that feels like it was, when you compare them to each other with how the, for the slack of the UI, for that new look and that new resolution screen. I don't want to go back to a game that now feels like it was made in 2002.
Yeah. Like, nobody wants to go back to 2016. If anybody actively says that they do, they're lying. You may go back to it just out of sheer frustration. Like, I can understand that. But if anyone actually says, "Oh, I actually want to go and play 2016 rather than play 2020," then you're lying, because nobody wants to play an older game. That's just the reality of it. We've waited 4 years for 2020. There's no way that you're going to actively say that. So, I feel like this video has gone off on a tangent where we spent more time, talking about the negatives and the positives, and that's fine, because we can actually have a discussion, and that we can actually point at things that we would like to see change and would like to see better, because we want the game to do well. We want the community to grow, and we don't want to be toxic about it.
No.
So, I mean, if you were to give me, 3 things that, you would change, like right off the bat, give me a solution. Give me 3 things that you would change and give me a solution.
All right, straight off, change the UI to be more like 2016 right off the bat. Give me those give me those easy to access menus where I know everything is. It's not that hard to do. Someone literally did it on the forums last night. You don't have to be some kind of whiz to access it. Yeah. It's not a problem at all. Stop making so many menus over complex for complexity's sake. To go, I guess this is an extension of the first point, but I shouldn't have to look for 2 minutes to find where my roster is. Point it out into my face. Make that text box smaller in the middle. It doesn't need to take up that much space. The font doesn't need to be so big. I complained about 2016 being too small. This has the problems of some stuff being too big. Then there is an easy middle to find. It is that you just shrink that text box down, give me those subheading menus, and stop putting the same thing in more than one place. Second, if you're going to allow people the ability to copy and paste a database over from TEW2016, make sure for the most part it works. And I'm not meaning like I have to go through and edit, the mentality that because I don't have I didn't go through 8,000 workers and put the traits on them myself, therefore I should be punished, is a bad outlook in the first place. And as well as that, you know, the some of the new aspects don't work with the 2016 database. Like when I was doing my AEW show, every single match I did, someone had a negative reaction. And I'm not just meaning like, you know, like a Michael Nakazawa or a Marco Stunt. No, I had people like Cody, Chris Jericho, Matt Jackson getting cold reactions from crowds. And, you know, if you're going to allow us the ability to copy and paste a database over, make sure to do extensive testing on that database before you do that. And I think the reality is that you either do the extensive testing and you kind of just auto-generate traits, or, to be more cynical, you just don't let us copy and paste the database over in the first place. And third and final one would maybe be... See, the problem is that I'm not sure for certain because we've only got 2 months to work off of. So it would be like, I don't really know, and I don't really want to talk about a glitch or anything like that. You'll have to come back to me so I can get a third point.
Yeah, I mean, if you've only got 2, then that's fantastic. I mean, for me, it would be a case of just the simple things like, just give me the ability to fire someone the way it does in 2016 back. Just revert some of the old things back. There's also another one in there where it's very difficult to find workers who have relationships like previous tag teams. Right. It takes about 3 or 4 clicks into different menus off of the roster page to find where like their previous tag teams are. Whereas before, obviously, when you went across to someone, you had their pop, you had their employment, you had their previous relationships all in one box that you could just scroll across. Just make things a little bit like that, just a little bit easier. Get rid of the color scheme. Just make it something neutral that doesn't burn my retinas out. Mm-hmm. I'd be really, really happy with that. And again, make the angles, just change the angles back to, you know, being able to change it to what I want to base it off.
Yeah.
Not force me having to go to freestyle. And that's not personally for me. That's for everyone else, because I would just freestyle stuff anyway.
Okay. My third and final point is something that I talked about beforehand. What the show should be preset. Allow us the ability to edit the presets again. Don't force us to be streamlined into one version, because, you know, I could probably book some entertaining AEW matches. I could probably do an entertaining AEW save that I'd enjoy while being tested by the hot and cold feature with the crowd and the natural pushes. But don't make me have to do a steal the show match on Dark. You know, don't make me have to let me edit it down so that, I only have to do storytelling once a show, while I can still maintain the AEW style, the AEW preset that's in the game. I don't have to change over to the old school wrestling style, or I don't have to change over to the sports entertainment style. Just make it so that if there is a problem, you know, if there's something about that I don't like, don't, you know, at the same time, don't enable it to be changed so that you only need to have like 80% wrestling a show, but don't make it too much. And I think that's the biggest thing that I could say about the 2020 so far. It's just too much of everything.
It is almost like, for me, to summarize, it's almost like Adam's taken every bit of feedback that's ever been given about TEW16 and every, you know, thing that everybody wants in terms of features and just given everyone their wish. It kind of just reminds me of what's the film where he becomes God, Bruce Almighty, you know, where he's away on his computer, he's getting emails and wishes through, and he goes yes constantly. And it's like, I think that's a perfect personification of how this game's gone. It's like everybody's got their wish, but in reality, it needs streamlining. It needs some sacrifices to be made.
Yeah,
that's what I think anyway.
And I'm not gonna shit on Ryland and be like, oh, this, you know, it won't happen. Maybe give him 2 or 3 months, and we'll be like, wow, this is the potential that 2020 had. Because it's not as if it's a bad game. It's a game that's just flawed right now. There's, in the same breath that 2K20 had, to relate it back to that, 2K20 had so much potential, but it was hidden behind its flaws. TEW2020 has tons of potential to be a game that we can play for 4 years and not think about, you know, TEW2024 coming out.
Yes.
The potential is there to be an absolute barn burner, excellent game. But if if the negatives are still there to an extent where it's been long enough, that people, maybe like myself, will just think, well, game wasn't made for me. And then I may never pick it up again. Like, I'm not saying it needs to be fixed on day one, but it does need, there are things that need to be fixed.
Yeah, I think my closing statement, I'll wrap this up by saying, for me anyway, I think a huge positive with this is I think the negatives are so much more easy to fix than the positives were to create.
Yes.
So I think a hell of a lot of work's been done into a lot of the positive stuff, and I think the negative stuff can just be easily fixed. I don't see how any of the negative stuff is a go back to the drawing board and create something new.
No.
Sort of scenario. I think it's a case of, it really is that easy to fix. And if Adam is watching this, because I'm pretty sure that he looks at all kind of feedback across YouTube, across Discord, or across the Grey Dog forum. If he does watch this and he does listen to this, you've created something good, and I love what you've put in. But please help us get rid of the toxicity by by fixing the small stuff.
Yeah, and as a side note, to the people being toxic, you are not very nice people. in the most PG sense that I can put it in, because I'm not going to stoop to that level of being that toxic. You are just you are leaving a negative light on the community, and also nearly every single thing, even including the UI, every single thing basically that we were talking about to fix was just looking back at 2016 and just taking something from there. Like, not everything needed to be changed, and now that we've seen what it looks like when it's changed, we have our old puppy back in some regards. Thank you.
Yeah, I know people don't like change. Like, it's like the South Park Member Berries episode, isn't it? Like, if anyone's ever watched that, it's kind of like we do want to cry back to what we're familiar with. I'm not saying that go back to TEW2020. I'm not saying that whatsoever. Like, keep all the new stuff that you've brought in. Just make it easier for me to use. That's all I'm asking for. Just give me what I want. Just give me what I want.
All right, Batista.
Yeah, and that's basically it, buddy. Have you got anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's it. To everyone who has sat through this, thank you for that as well. If you have anything you agree or disagree on, I'd actually like to hear it as well. I think we can have a very civil discussion, I hope, about it. We can see the positives and the negatives and what we believe in. And yeah, I hope in due time, this community bands together and we can look back at this in 3 months and be like, hey, I'm glad it worked out the way that it did, because the game that we've got now is fantastic.
Yeah, I'd love to be able to get to 3 months' time and be like, oh, do you remember that time when everyone was being a dick about it?
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to look back on that. I just want to say thanks for doing this to me, fella.
No problem.
If you don't follow Jake on YouTube, please do. His channel is ProJaked. His content is incredible. I watch everything that he puts out, and I think you should do too. Link down to his stuff's in the description. But thanks for coming on, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.